You're pissing me off. You're pissing me off.
Because you started this whole argument.
No, I did
Yes,
not.
you it's simple. Don't look at me a certain way when I talk. Don't look at me a certain way and we'd be all right.
All right, well, don't ask stupid questions. There, I said it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Do the Work podcast. I am your host, AZ Araujo, alongside with
Carla Araujo.
Dude, I don't know how I'm going to feel after this podcast. I'm already getting a little angry. I'm getting a little resentful, a little pissed off. Like, the energy we have in this room right now, it's not all that great.
Well,
it's not.
It's not. It's not because you this morning.
Because me.
I want to talk
beyond that.
And I just previously made a live video on intimidating.
Intimidation.
Intimidation. Okay, intimidation. There. Happy? Okay, intimidation. Not intimidation. There. Because you're always trying to correct me. So let's correct me.
Okay.
Intimidation.
So guys, stay tuned. This is going to be a spicy one.
I did a live video because men, there's certain things that men do that try to intimidate the women all the time. They don't even know they're doing it. That's what's crazy. It could be a silent, like a complete silent and just that stare. It can be a certain way that they cross their arms, the way they stand. You're trying to intimidate the woman. You don't even know that.
Body language,
Their body language. You don't even know that you're doing that. And you did that this morning.
I think women go about it a different way. Well, especially one, like, and I'm talking in regular relationships. I'm not talking about the abusive relationship where the man lays his hands. I don't know.
So let's go there.
Let's go there.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
No, we're not talking about
here.
We're just talking about normal relationships, those that don't cross certain lines.
Right.
But I think we've all crossed lines when it comes to verbal, because there is no physical, but I think all parties cross that line. But I think from my retrospect, I'm never going to lay my hands on you.
Right,
I'm never going to step up to you. I just would never cross that line.
Right.
However, in knowing that, I think sometimes you cross the line on the way you speak to me, right? And I think I do it a different way to you, where I kind of not belittle, but I question you to make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about.
You belittle me because you did this morning.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so you want to talk about it? Go ahead.
No, you did this morning.
Okay. And you've also done it where you're coming at me, and I'm like, dude, if you were a dude, I would have.
And I agree. I think we do step our boundaries.
We overstep our boundaries.
And I'm only talking on my, I don't know about all the women out there, but I know me, and I do it. I think I push your buttons because I know you're not going to disrespect me. You've never cussed at me. You've never laid your hand on me, and I know that.
Yeah.
And so I come at you pretty strong. And I did that a couple of days ago. I came at you pretty strong because I was very frustrated. I was overwhelmed with a lot of things going on, and so I came at you pretty strong. It's like, okay, let me have my punching bag, which you do become my punching bag.
Right. I think spouses become that person because we're just there, right?
And we get comfortable. And it is your job, your responsibility to protect yourself against me. So you said, you know what? I don't need you to talk to me this way, and I got to go kind of deal. And so then I don't know if we called each other back or what it was, but my solution came quickly. It was like, okay, I need more help, and I'm going to hire people.
Yeah.
So you were coming at me like, wait a minute. You had to go this far using me as a punching bag of your frustration to come up with a solution. Why couldn't you? And I'm like, I let my emotions take over me.
Yeah.
Because the old you would have questioned me and my frustration. You would have questioned me.
I wouldn't have. What I did is I just allowed you to speak whatever you needed.
Right.
I also told you you're crossing certain lines.
Right.
I need you to back off, and then I gave you the space.
Right.
You, through that, you said, I'm hiring another person.
Right.
And this is something I've talked to you about, often, because we've been in this situation. I'm like, you got to hire another person.
Right.
But you needed to come to that place, and as opposed to me coming back at you with the solution,
right.
I just said, you're crossing the line here. I'm going to create some space. And you were like, I need a hire.
Right.
But before, I didn't allow that space.
No, you were always trying to come up with
do this.
Right.
Yeah.
You're always trying to control me in a sense and give me that solution in an intimidating way almost.
It is intimidation. I think we do it to both.
Right. And
both ways.
And I don't think you realized that you were doing that. And I don't think I was realizing that I was doing that. And you're right. As a male, and again, we're not talking about abusive relationships out there, but as a male, I knew you weren't going to ever lay your hands on me and talk to me a certain way. So it gave me the open window to be like,
to
okay.
Scream and yell. Because I even told you that. I even told you that. I said, can you imagine if I came at you with the same ferocity, with the same level of aggressiveness
right.
at you?
Right.
That I would be locked up. right? Just by speaking to you that long.
Right.
But I also got to understand that I'm a 6'2" dude, right? 200 pounds.
And maybe you have plans for that being locked up because now you have a tattoo going on.
Now I look more.
So are you trying to set yourself up?
No, but I'm saying it's like I got to understand my position as well. I'm a man.
Right.
And in most situations, men are just physically stronger.
Right.
And of course, there's exceptions to every rule.
Right.
But for the most part, we are stronger than women physically.
Right.
So there is an intimidation aspect of that already, just my physical appearance. So when I look at you a certain way, guess what? You're going to put your defense mechanisms up because you're thinking, hey, this dude could possibly hurt me, even though I wouldn't.
And I want to talk about that. Let's talk about this morning, for example. And this happens all the time. This is a common thing I think in relationships, obviously. And it's not something where we're on a rainbow and you and I get along all the time. And so
no, but I want to make it clear.
Let's talk about this morning.
Yes,
because this morning was such a perfect example. The details behind it don't matter, but
the details don't matter.
We were in the room and we were in a conversation, and it got a little bit. You were questioning me, and some of the things I was saying, you're like, it doesn't make sense. But the way you became kind of quiet and looked at me, exactly what you're doing right now, like
what are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you saying?
And I do that a lot,
right?
Because because your thought process is different from mine. So if it's different from mine, of course, I'm gonna think then it's wrong,
right?
And that's just the way I'm made up. Not to say that I'm always right, but I have a certain way I respond to that.
Right.
And I give that response to you on a constant basis, which makes you question yourself. When you did nothing wrong, I just look at you a certain way. I think that's my way to intimidate you.
Right.
Is to be like, or to nudge you under the chair type of thing when we're in a conversation, when it's like, hey, listen, that's Carla. Let her be who she needs to be. But yet I use that as an intimidation aspect of it.
And you don't even know you're doing it.
I don't.
And I don't know that I'm doing it. And I think that's what happens in relationships. We don't know. We're not aware of what we're actually doing to one another because we become so comfortable because we would never treat a complete stranger that way.
Yeah. And I think, there's some people that fall under that same, the same situation as we do, but they go a step above. I'm not saying one is better than the other, right? I think talking to the other person in a disrespectful manner is not right. It's a line that shouldn't be crossed, but I think we all cross it in one way or another.
Right.
Some do it even at a higher level, where they're cussing each other out, where they're going back and forth.
And I want to say that I don't think that one or the other is right. So when I hear that about spouses cussing at each other, but yet never put their hands on each other, it's just every once in a while they get frustrated and they use the F word or the B word. Who's to say they're right? Oh, but you and I argue better. You and I argue in a better respectful manner. It's like an argument's an argument. Disrespect to disrespect.
Disrespect, but I think there's certain levels of it. I think with all, like even crime, there's certain levels of it. So yes, I think we have to be aware of our own actions, right? So I think crossing the line when you're screaming and yelling at each other and cussing each other out, I think I don't think that's ever right. And I think, if we look at it from a just a societal standpoint, there's certain norms that must be followed, right? I mean, we don't want to fall within a box, but then again, there is certain norms.
Right.
So when people argue, well, that's what works for us in our relationship, then it's maybe time to dig a little bit deeper of why you think it's okay to talk to certain individuals.
To cuss each other out.
And me, I'm looking at that as like, why do I think it's okay for me to look at you like, hey, you're doing something wrong, when I'm not the know-it-all. I'm not the person that I don't think that higher being.
And I think you just being you is you. Like I said earlier, it's our responsibility to take control of our actions in the relationship. So if I lash out at you, it's not your job to figure me out. It's not your job to figure out.
It's my job to get myself in a situation where I say, hey, it's not. I'm not taking this. I'm moving myself up.
And you're right. When you get your silent treatment to me, or your nudge or your look, it's my job to step away and not to sit there and act like a crazy misdirected anger because I'm so angry that you're treating me a certain way, or shut down. It's like, hey, I don't like the way you're looking at me or talking to me, so I'm going to step away from a minute. But yeah, back then it was just be like, I'm going to walk away because I'm so afraid of you. I don't know what you're going to say to me. I don't know if you're going to basically intimidate me by, your hurtful words, and you don't even know that they're hurtful. It goes both ways.
I don't think I ever use profanity. I think the way I do need to work on certain things though. I think I make you feel less than sometimes. I make you feel less than.
You've never
and that's still
used
a
those
form,
kind of words.
Right. I may not be the guy that's saying, fuck you, or, go. I'm not that guy.
Right.
But I think I do it in a more, I'm going to be like in a more manipulative way, if you really think about it. Like, I'm processing this as I'm speaking, right? But for me to make you feel less than, that is a form of manipulation and intimidation.
I think there's certain things that we all have. We'll be in a conversation, and if you think that what I say is wrong, you will literally call me out in front of the person. That is wrong. That's wrong. And I'm like, this is my conversation.
Yeah.
And I think I've told you in the past, like, hey, let me speak what I think in my story, because we see it two different ways, right?
Yes.
But if it's not your way, you used to call me out in front of people. And you used to be like, it's wrong. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's not wrong. It's my story. But it was incorrect to you, right?
But I'll catch myself, kind of like you'll say something, I'm just like shaking my head and walking away. It's like,
right. So in a conversation, we'll be talking, let's say with a third person, you do that. You shake your head and you walk away. So it stops me in my track, like, what I just said was wrong. Did I say something to hurt? Am I saying something incorrectly? But the way you do is you shake your hand and your head and you just walk away, and you leave me standing there with that second person. I'm like, what did I just say?
Yeah.
That right there is intimidation, because now it makes me feel like kind of very small.
Right.
And I'm like shutting down. So I'm literally trying to get that person away from me, because whatever I said, I want to go find out from you what I did wrong.
Yeah.
And that right there alone.
And there's many podcasts, right, where I fixate on certain aspects of it. We could have had a podcast that was on fire, but one little aspect, I'll fixate on that. And all of a sudden you start questioning yourself on the entire podcast. Right. It's like, wait a minute, this is not right. So I see that, even though I don't do it in a way where society thinks I'm wrong, right? Because if I were to raise my voice, 9 out of 10 people, or all 10 people, would say AZ is using intimidation as his way to get things, right? And the whole, if we were to just simply define intimidation, is to frighten or threaten someone, right? Usually in order to persuade the person to do something he or she does not wish to do. Right. So, even though I'm not verbal about it or physical about it, the way my body language is that form of intimidation.
It's kind of what I got here. It could be very subtle. It could be like your spouse being shocked at the way you handle life. At the way we show up. It can be something very different to you. It's like, why are you saying that? Why are you showing up this way when you should be doing this and showing up this way? That is your way. And it could be very subtle. It's intimidation right there. It could be very subtle, and it can bleed into your success. It can bleed into your business. And that's what I had done earlier in that live video. Intimidation comes from all kinds of areas, but we don't really know. And that's how we actually are showing up in all areas of our life. We're intimidated.
Well, yeah. I mean, even the way I speak to my daughters, right? I got to understand that I am physically already an intimidating figure, right? I already am. So when I raise, it's funny because the girls are used to mom being mom. Like, hey, yelling or just being loud. That's how mom is. But at the moment dad does it, all of a sudden, like, all eyes are peeled open. Like, it's very different. And I can only be a fraction of the level mom is, but they see dad completely different. Why? Well, I got to understand as a man, and I think most men need to understand this, that when you step up to your wife, even though she might show a lot of bravery and that she could stand up for herself, there's a certain part of them that knows you can physically hurt them. And we need to understand that. Right? So I think there's a way we have to show up as a man, and I'm only speaking to men here. We got to understand our own physical stature. That is intimidating in itself. Right. And you can't take to the same velocity that your wife might take it. Right. Because I cannot take it to that level, because you cannot physically hurt me. Right. Well, if you grab a meat cleaver or something, right. I get it.
But I think the way we lash out is by this
the voice.
Yeah. We start to get loud and we start to defend ourselves in a way that's unnecessary. It's just a very simple, like, hey, don't talk to me this way. But we don't communicate that way just because there's so much anger piled up in us. And it's like the only way to defend ourselves is by coming out strong and just screaming or shutting down, which a lot of women just kind of like, I don't want to start an argument, so I'm just going to shut down and just stay quiet until he gets over his attitude.
And I think that's even worse for men.
It is, because men sometimes want that argument. They want you to come out with your feelings. They want a conversation. They want something from you. They don't want you to shut down. Yeah. They just don't know that. But they don't also want the screaming, individual. And some of us turn into that. We turn because that's our defense mechanism.
But I think we've done a pretty good job of being able to bring this to the surface, right? Bringing things that used to bother you about me And me realizing that's something that I need to really work on.
That's a very good question. Like, is it best? It's a very good question. Is it better when we get in these heated arguments and I'm kind of afraid of you? Should I walk away and just be quiet, or should I come out with my feelings and be like, hey, I don't. And so, right? So that's very hard, because I've heard this both ways, where women are like, I just walk away because it's two screaming people. It doesn't make sense, right? And I walk away. But when the man feels better, the woman is willing to say, okay, I forgive you. But instead of talking about it, because the woman's feeling shut down. So that's not healthy. But it's also not healthy in an argument where I'm going to yell and scream to protect myself. And you're like, whoa, I'm just talking to you. But I'm like, I don't think you see yourself, your whole body language.
Body language.
That's scaring me
now. I think I used to do that a lot.
Which is better? Which is better, though?
I think that is a form. And we had a show on manipulation altogether, right? Where I manipulation is making the other person feel like they're the one in the wrong. They're the one that not. And I think I used to do that. So I would look at you like, do you see? Do you see how you're getting? Do you see how you're yelling? Do you see, like, so I would turn this around to make you look like this crazy, out of control woman. But because I didn't do it in that same manner, doesn't make it more, it's not more acceptable, right? The way I was looking at you to begin with, which I knew I was doing, but then I act oblivious on it, right? I was like, what are you talking about? All I said was, I never raised my voice. So I would use that defense mechanism, not defense, that excuse that I didn't do anything to trigger the way you're acting.
Right.
And I would constantly do that to a point where you thought, maybe I'm crazy, right? You were thinking like, maybe I'm the one who's.
And I remember this. I remember we did a previous podcast on this. I remember that. I think just in general, I think, AZ, like the way you, because I'm surrounded by you like day in and day out, 24 hours, 7 days a week. I think the way you showed up in this relationship was bleeding into the way I was showing up in other areas of my life. And so you intimidating me by those certain ways.
It eroded your confidence.
Well, yeah, it did. And then I would see it in another men. So for me to have a conversation one-on-one with other individuals, with other men, or even women, it was just stealing that confidence. And like, I couldn't, because the looks or the arm crossing or whatever, I'm like, wow, that's what AZ does. Yeah. And so the intimidation was still there, was still wired in my head.
Yes.
So you were kind of a bad influence.
I was.
Because I was bleeding into, and then we would go into business and you'd be like, I need you to do this. And I'm like, I can't run at that speed because I'm so scared and intimidated. But I didn't realize that you literally were that bad influence. And not to say, I guess I'm not lashing out on you or whatever, because obviously there's so much in there that I've done wrong as well. But we're in this conversation that it was bleeding into my confidence, and you were stealing that from me, because I thought, well, if you look at me like that, if you treat me this way, everyone else is going to treat me this way.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think, as couples, oftentimes we erode each other's confidence. We erode each other's ambitions, goals, as opposed to building them. And it's just through, the way we see ourselves, and we're frustrated, and the only thing we can do is lash out at the other person, whether it's through just body language or through screams. And some people take it overboard and do it physically, Physical abuse and verbal abuse, where they're really yelling at each other and being disrespectful. I think we've been pretty mindful of knowing where we need to draw the line, even though I think sometimes you're a habitual line crosser, but never to a point where you're cussing at me, right? You're just venting.
You're pointing fingers.
What?
Because again, how do you see yourself?
As this angel, what are you talking about?
I know that's what I'm saying. Now you're pointing fingers. Like, I think you're just assuming that I'm this way just because through what you see.
But I think we have to have some type of base, because here's the thing: we've seen couples screaming at each other in public before, and the whole time I'm thinking, man, if this is what they're showing in general public, I wonder what happens behind these closed doors. It's only a fraction. If you can't contain yourself, in public, there's no way that you can contain yourself at home.
At home, right.
And that's only a fraction. And the intensity of how we go at it is only a fraction of what people would see. Even though our crew has seen some of it, it's behind closed doors, it could even get more intense.
Right.
But I think it's the intensity that doesn't cross certain lines, I guess. But that doesn't make it right as well. So it's kind of like that whole thing where we have to bring it back to ourselves and understand, like, why do we feel like we need to be at this level to begin with?
Right.
So
it's like you can't you can't save the person who, I guess when we try to go and try to calm the other person down, it's like you can only control yourself.
Yeah.
And try to figure out why you're about to lash back at the other person.
And, before I was oblivious to the things I would say to you or the physical or the looks.
Right.
Now I'm aware.
And that's,
I'm
I was
aware
just going
now.
to tell you that. Yeah, like this morning, I caught myself wanting to get upset that you gave me that grin or that look or that body language, but I didn't. I stepped back because I'm
and then I caught myself, yeah.
I'm like, I'm not even going to bother because I know where I stand and what I said is not incorrect. What I said is what I said, and that's it, plain and simple. And then you caught yourself. So I think now we're more in tune with ourselves on how we treat each other, and mainly how we treat ourselves. I catch myself when I do want to blow up. And so I always have to talk to myself to be like, hold on a minute, what's the real problem here? And the real problem is sometimes my mind takes me back to the past where how you used to treat me and talk to me.
Yeah.
And now it's like, wait a minute, you're not that person anymore, Carla. Now you have a voice. And what I said. And so you don't like it, you don't like it. So I deal with that. You don't intimidate me anymore in that sense. You don't do anything. I used to be afraid to even ask you the simple questions. It's like, I don't care. And it's kind of a nice now because going back to our kitchen, it's being, obviously it's being gutted and it's such a beautiful kitchen now. But there's so much going on and craziness and contractors in and out. And before you used to be in control when we've had several construction sites or whatever, but now it's like, hey, I need everybody's contact, the major contractors, because they're in my house and I need to call the shots on what's and who's coming. And before it used to be like, oh, you're going to have an attitude, or you're going to be like, and what's the problem? Now it's like, what's the problem? Either you give it to me or I'm going to go hunting down for the contractor. So there's just certain things that now I'm in control of my life, of the situation.
As opposed to trying to put me as the middleman so I can fail.
Right. And so, or just little things like now, but back then, I don't think, like I said, you were in a bad influence in a sense because you would intimidate me, so would everyone else. And it doesn't play like that. I want to talk a quick story. You weren't home one day and there was a plumber coming in and talking about intimidating. So, and I don't think males realize that they do this to women because I don't think that, and I want to talk a quick story because it falls along the line. So contractor knocks on my door and the major contractor didn't tell me that he was coming. So he knocks on my door 5:30 at 5:30 in the evening. And he knocks and he said, I'm in here to fix some washer thing. And I said, okay, no one contacted me that you were coming. And it's already 5 o'clock. I don't want contractors in my house past 3:30. And so you were like, let him in. I'm like, no, I don't even know what he's coming for. That's not in the agenda. No. I had called you, but you were like, it's not even the agenda kind of deal, right? But I only called you not to come save me. I called you to see if you knew anything about it. And you said, I don't. I'm like, okay, cool. You didn't tell me or give me a solution. You were just like, no, I don't. Okay, bye. And then so I hung up with you, and then I opened up the door and I told the contractor again, hey, you're not coming in. And he's like, I need to fix, I'm called. And I'm like, it's also 5:30. And then he questioned me again. He said, so you're not going to let me in? I go, what part of no didn't you hear? And he's just like, he walks away. So then in my mind, I'm like, but the way he approached it was like, so you're not going to let me in?
Yeah.
And the way
like,
he
hey,
said
little girl.
Like, you're not going to let me in. I'm like, what part of no don't you understand?
Because me as a man, if I would have been at that door and I told him you're not coming in, he would never ask me twice. He never asked
you. Yeah. So when he asked me twice, he said to me, so you're not going to let me in? I'm like, no. Right there and then, intimidation. So I'm like, what do you think? Do you try to intimidate me, like to come in my house after I said no? But I don't think he'd realize he didn't. I don't think he purposely did it. I don't think males understand that they do that to women every day, all the time. I don't think they realize that. And so the woman rises up with this attitude, in which I did. Some women will give in to the pressure. Will give into the pressure, and say, okay, well, I guess, whatever it may be, or like, or they get afraid. And so to me, I'm like, no. And so I closed the door and I locked it and whatever, right? But I'm like, so let's say I did show up because he probably thought, man, this lady's mean. But it wasn't that I was mean. I defended myself on something. You stepped up to my door, which, by the way, you shouldn't have been that close. And so for me to tell you, no. And so to him, he was like, all right. But I'm like, oh, so now I'm in the wrong on the way I responded to you. But you would have never questioned a male. Are you going to let me in? You would have never said that to a male. So somehow, I don't think men understand that they do this to women all the time. Yeah. And so when women rise up, they are like these crazy nuts.
Well, I think that there's a way to, I don't think we understand that we're constantly disempowering women, right? We disempower them, by questioning them like he did to you. He probably has no idea. Another way is by saying, oh, how you doing, sweetheart? they're trying to be endearing, right?
Right.
But you're a professional woman. They have no idea who you are, and somebody's calling you sweetheart or sweetie. It's like, why are you? And you say this all the time. Why are you putting me in a position of less than?
Right.
Who do you call sweetheart to?
Right.
Little girls, little kids.
And
you're
I say
darling.
that all the time. When
you're so cute.
I will not allow. Not that I have anything against it, but me personally, I will not allow a man to call me sweetheart.
Yeah.
I absolutely will not. I am not your freaking sweetheart. I am a grown ass woman.
Yeah.
And you would not. And I wouldn't even let. I mean, I'm not a 10-year-old. I'm not a 15-year-old. I'm not a 20-year-old.
Well, I think that men do that without knowing that
Right,
their position.
right.
That's a framing
Right.
aspect.
But
because what you're doing, you're saying, hey, I'm here,
Yeah.
and let me look at you like you're so cute,
Right.
little sweetheart.
And
It's
men
like,
do
I
that
get
all
it.
the time, but they
Yeah.
don't realize that they're doing it until someone calls them out. So you come into me and you call me that, I will call you out.
Yeah.
And I
But I
promise
think
you that
there's
you
some
realize
men-
that you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing that.
But I think it is also a way women show up, because I can't remember the
100
last time. I can't remember the
100%
last
agree.
time somebody actually told you that.
Right.
But the weaker Carla, you were getting called that all the time. So I
Yep.
think there's a part of us that understand. I think there's all human nature. It's like you can sense somebody's weakness.
I
right?
totally
So-
100% agree. That's why I don't think that. That's why I said I really can't tell the men that they're wrong on what they're doing, because they don't know, but they don't realize. The woman doesn't realize, like, that's how you're showing up.
Yeah.
That's how they're treating you. Because there's no way in heck nowadays a guy would even say that to me, sweetheart. They wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
And
but
so
before you would get that, and I've seen other women that come in shy, that come in intimidated already, or not secure or confident. The first, even in our industry,
Right.
it's a man will treat them as
Right.
if, sweetheart, let me show you, sweetheart. Come on, sweetie. And it's like they can sense your weakness.
Right.
So I think I'm going to challenge this to women out there. If you're
Right.
constantly being called that, how are they seeing you? And how are you actually
showing up. Right.
Because
so it can go both ways. It's not always
Yeah.
necessarily is it a bad on the man
No,
calling them sweetheart, because they don't know that, right? But how is a woman showing up that it's okay for the man to look at you and you're giving him that energy of the weak energy.
helpless.
You're helpless. Yeah.
Let me
So let
help
me
you.
help
Yeah.
you. Let me call you sweetheart. Let me make
Yeah.
you feel comfortable. And then let me take you under my wing.
Yes.
So, and again, that's the whole entire man's here, the woman's here. I want to make sure when we
get it.
show up, this is how you're going to feel. And I don't think they realize they're doing that. And I don't think the woman is
See,
realizing that she's
I
showing
know
up like that.
now. I'll never call you sweetheart. I call you sweet cheeks.
You know what? And that's a
No,
marital thing.
yeah,
That's
marital.
I love the Sweet Cheeks name. That's my name. I mean, somehow, I always tell this to some of my clients, like, when you come home and you work with your spouse, you got to shut that off.
Yeah.
And be a lover, be a
Yeah.
wife, be whatever,
Feminine.
be feminine. Yeah, be his, whatever you want.
My toy.
Yeah, the toy. I mean, God, I love that. Like, treat me like that. But in business, don't do that.
Yeah.
Do not disrespect
not,
me.
yes.
I do not. But when we're home, hey.
Hey, the walls.
I
you're
love
protect-
it.
yeah.
I love it. But and again,
I remember we
there's
had that
just-
conversation. I said, hey, I would just love for you to be my wife when I get home, because there was a certain aspect of, like, I'm an alpha in business. I'm going to continue to bring that at home. And, I think we brought that awareness that it's okay to be loving. It's okay
And
to
you
be
brought
caring.
that
It's okay
up-
to be feminine.
You brought that up to me in one of our worst times of our lives in our marriage. That was a very big conversation piece. And I remember that conversation. We were outside of my car and we were sitting on the trunk of my hood, like the trunk or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were saying, hey, I remember telling you that I don't know how I feel about you anymore. And it was a really deep conversation. It was so sad. Because that was a time where our breaking point almost, and we had, I don't know how that was even brought up in our marriage, but you were like, you continue showing up like this alpha all over, like, from business and bringing it home, and I didn't realize I was doing that because
Yeah.
I was on such a high horse and it felt so
Yeah.
good to be powerful, and it was like so good to continue punching you in the nuts and giving it, like, remember that time?
Yeah.
And I was belittling you in a sense because I was taking everything from you.
Yeah.
And
well, you used everything my history against
right,
me.
I did.
Everything
I
that
did. I remember that.
That I told you, everything, my failures, you would use that against me. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of men in that situation right
Uh-huh.
now where their women has their balls.
Yeah. I
And
took your power.
You took their power. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And I felt that way too
Yeah.
because of the failures, because
And
of my mistakes.
Do you know what I was missing? I
What's
was
that?
missing the feminine part of me. I
Yes.
was missing that. I was like, man, the only reason why it's hard to love me is because I'm not allowing you to love me. I'm not allowing myself to come home and be the wife that I want to be and the lover that I want to be, all these things. It's not so much about the wife. It's just being me and
Yeah.
cuddling up to you. I want a man to hold
Yeah.
me and hug me. I think it's incredible. I think love
Yeah.
is incredible.
Yeah.
But I wasn't giving that part of me because I was so afraid that if I go to that person again, I was going to
treat you
yes.
as that
little
Yeah.
sweetheart.
No, I get it. Now I know we got off subject a little bit there, but it
all
great. Ties in.
It all ties in
into intimidation and look at our own behaviors. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Do the Work podcast. And of course, I'm gonna remind you to subscribe, rate, and review. Go to dothework.com or go to your favorite podcast providers and subscribe. And I'll tell you what, I leave this out there. If you send me a copy of your review, I will send you some Do the Work gear. So check it out. We've sent a lot already. It's your turn to get your gear. Carla, this was didn't go as bad as I thought it was going to be, as far as because there's a little bit of tension.
I know, and our guys
this.
catch the rawness of it all, like the real, like
they start pressing record already. So we have like a library of us having these fights.
And that's the hardest part when we make these podcasts, because it literally is something that happened in our currently or in our marriage.
Yeah, and it's still in the heat of the moment.
It is. So when we come at each other hard. So it's kind of like we got to let all that fire out, and these guys hear it. But that's what it is, and this is the life we chose, and what we do is we're passionate about it, and it's amazing. I love it, and I love you, and
absolutely.
And for us to come here and really walk away, not feeling the heat of. And when we first started this couple of years ago, we used to walk away.
It was so
arguing,
rough.
arguing.
And I think we've come too far. We've gone too deep,
right?
To allow little things like this to ever wedge,
right,
our relationship. So we know it's just a moment in time.
Yeah.
That you and I are powerful enough to be able to overcome, and I think that's the key difference to who we were to who we are today. We don't get caught up on the small moments,
right,
because we've been in some deep places, Carla,
right,
some dark places, and we're coming out shining. So we understand that, and even though we have some heated moments, it's only a fraction of time, and we're able to
bounce
overcome.
Right back. Yep.
Yes.
Go back. Yep.
All right.
I love it. Thank you for joining us.
And we will talk to you
soon.
Bye now.
Bye.